want to move on to talk about some of the more clueless celebrity remarks of the past week or so. David Tennant caused a bit of a stir for his comments on trans.
There are now ways of expressing gender that are more nuanced than they once were, and that only seems to be positive. It's just about people being themselves. Fuck off and let people be.
Paul, I mean, in light of the cast review, do you think it's really reasonable for someone to say there's only been positive in the trans movement, in, you know, this brave new world of gender?
Well, when David Tennant says, you know, F off and let me be and whatever, I think until, if you like, the real kind of militant trans activists started leading their campaign and making some of the unreasonable demands that they did over recent years, most people in the country were of that view.
Yeah.
You know, let people be. You know,
Yeah.
if a guy wants to wear a dress, if a woman wants to wear something that traditionally a man might wear, who cares? You know,
Yeah.
good luck to them, and it's not for us to tell them what they shouldn't wear, how they should present themselves, how they should do their hair and makeup and whatever. I think that was most people's attitude. But the problem with what he's arguing is it's not good enough simply to say let me be, when what you're asking for has got the capacity to impact on other people's rights. Mm-hmm. And in this case, on the rights and the security and the privacy and the dignity of women. Actually, that is an issue, and people are entitled to say, well, look, this far but no further, which is essentially, I think, what the pushback has been over the last few years. And quite rightly, that's been the pushback. You know, people said, look, and women particularly said, look, you know, we went so far in terms of live and let live, but the minute you start to encroach on our rights and the whole sense of womanhood, if it's to have any meaning, then actually we've got a right to say no. So I think that kind of simplistic approach from Tennant, I think, is a bit patronising.
Yeah, and children, I guess, is the other aspect of this, Tom. I mean, Tennant has previously been spotted wearing a T-shirt saying, "Leave trans kids alone, you weirdos," or something like that. I mean, again, you know, maybe we should leave them alone, but
exactly
not in the way that they mean.
Exactly, don't apply them with puberty blockers.
Yeah.
But it's, yes, that there is an element to, particularly David Tennant, but others as well, of kind of the dad trying to be cool to a certain extent in certain settings. There's this kind of idea. He hasn't really thought about it. He obviously hasn't read about it for longer than a few minutes. He probably takes all of his cues from Pink News on these matters, and yet still feels the compulsion to hold forth and to virtue signal on these things. But you would think that now, given all that we know, given the cast review, given all of the horrendous victims of this ideology who have come out of the woodwork in recent years, that there would be more pause for thought before you just engage in that kind of thing at the moment. And one thing I thought was interesting was the way he tried to equate the trans rights campaign with basically earlier kind of gay rights campaigns. It was, you know, in the same way that people used to be horrible to gay people and they were deprived their rights, the same things is going on now. It's so wrong-headed, you don't really know where to begin with it. And Paul was gesturing to it there insofar as previously, if you talk about gay rights, there was a campaign for liberation, anti-discrimination, leave us alone. What the trans ideology sort of movement has become is recognise us, affirm us,
celebrate
us, and so on.
Organise society around
rip up
us.
all of your rules that previously governed how women's spaces were maintained, who could compete in certain categories, for the sake of my own view of myself. It's a campaign of intolerance and for recognition. And so to equate the two, I think is deeply wrong-headed. But again, I think in a very kind of simplistic celebrity sort of fashion, they just want to be seen, as he uses the words in that clip, on the right side of history.
It's a high status opinion, isn't it, for a lot of people? I mean, I think the argument that they espouse has been absolutely debunked.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen, you know, if you want to call a gender critical supporter, defeated in a debate by a militant trans activist. That's because the arguments are on the side. The scientific arguments, the principle arguments, the moral arguments are on the side of those with so-called gender critical beliefs. But despite that, I think, the likes of Tennant see it as high status, the kind of be kind brigade. Look at me, I'm arguing for this. Let's all, peace and love and understanding. And actually, life isn't that simple. If you're making demands that are impacting on other people's rights, then you have to expect pushback. You have to expect people to say, sorry, no, we're not having that.